You don't.
No,
I think you're going to be all right. Apparently, I just earned my position in history with that, so we're good to go. So, all right, well, we're going to get rolling on the next breakout sessions, guys. So, I don't even know that you need an introduction. Have you had a chance to talk to everybody already?
I think so.
This is great. So, Jim is going to talk to us about the latest, the greatest, and what's happening.
Yep.
Great?
Absolutely.
The world of unified computing. Perfect.
Cool.
Thanks, Jim.
Quick question. We got a small group. How many people have UCS? Or let me back up. How many people have any UCS in their environment today? Okay, so nobody does. How many people have seen the UCS story at least once? Okay, so you have, okay, so we got one person. Okay, because I can kind of take this any way we want to go. So, you know, Cisco, so first of all, by way of introduction, my name is Jim Elmstrom. I'm a data center consulting systems engineer. What that means is I'm the technical part of the cell. I cover all things data center. And roughly speaking, for us, data center is anything that runs Nexus code. So the Nexus 1K all the way up to the Nexus 9000. All of UCS runs it. I've got a slide that shows this. Our MDS platform runs Nexus code as well. So that's what I cover. Data center, I've been with Cisco for 16 years. I've been covering data center for, I think, 9 now. Something like that. Data center is one of the biggest growth areas for Cisco. Okay, we're doing a lot of things within that. You can see here that you know, some of the data center momentum. In our earnings report, John always talks about, you know, where we're at with data center and how we're growing within that environment. So it is a big growth area for us in a big big area of focus. Data center. So question I get asked all the time is, you know, what is data center and what is different about Nexus than it is about our Catalyst switch, which we've had for years and years. And really, when you think about it, what Nexus really brings is a lot of tools to be able to support virtualization. Okay, so VMware, when we started virtualizing all the servers, we've got a lot of different features, right? We got to consolidate the number of servers, but we also got features. We got vMotion. I can start moving workloads around, right? I can do things like fault tolerance and DRS and a lot of different things. That's the good news. The bad news is that all of those features require layer 2, okay? I need layer 2 connectivity. And so take out layer 2 and say failure domain, right? So if spanning tree, in all its glory, decides that it is going to go down or cause trouble, right, everybody's down, right? Everybody in that layer 2 or that layer 2 failure domain is affected. So what Nexus did was bring in a bunch of tools that allowed us to be able to carry out a lot of that functionality, and you know, that layer 2 functionality to be able to support virtualization, and at the same time protect ourselves, okay? Now, I'm not going to go into all of the different pieces within this, other than to highlight a couple of things with UCS. We are now, we've been doing UCS now for 5 years. I think it was June of 2009 we did the introduction. So it's 5 years. We took a lot of the same features from data center, our data center switches, right? So we've always owned the network, right? And so what we did was we took all of those components that we know and love so much and added the compute on top of it. Okay, the compute is all, you know, x86. We're all Intel based, so we're not having to reinvent the wheel. But what we're doing is integrating that all together. And we took a lot of those features that we do and we know so well, right? So things like unified ports, where now I don't have to have switches that have fiber channel and I don't have to have switches that are LAN based. I have switches that can be whatever I need them to be. I need a fiber channel port, it's a fiber channel port. I need, you know, iSCSI, it's iSCSI. I need it 1 gig, I need it 10 gig, all of that is there, okay? So we brought in FCOE, where now we can consolidate fabrics, right? So we're running fiber channel and Ethernet on the same wire. And again, a lot of the different functions, I'm not going to go into all of them, but things like VPCs, where we're able to scale up the number of active links. OTV, where now I can go and carry layer 2 across a layer 3 infrastructure, right? So whether I'm virtualized or bare metal, I can now take those layer 2 packets and protect myself. protect myself from if spanning tree melts down over here, I'm not affected over here. Fabric path is our implementation of Trill where we can have up to 16 active paths. The one big one that we talk a lot about is our FEX-Link. FEX-Link, what that is essentially a remote line card capability. So if you're familiar with a network chassis-based switch, right? I generally have a chassis. I put a couple one or two supervisor modules in it, and then I can add line cards. When I need additional capacity, what do? I add a line card. When I add that line card, I don't log into that line card to do the configuration. I log into the supervisor to do that configuration, okay? And I don't have to put an IP address on it. I don't have to configure it. I don't have to worry about the code that's on it. It's all of its intelligence is in that supervisor module. So what we did with FEX-Link was we said, okay, that's really great, but I want to be able to take that line card and put it remote. Okay, so I want to be able to take that line card and put it at top of rack. So that's our Nexus 2000 is a FEX, right? It's a remote line card. We basically wrap sheet metal and power around it. It doesn't support any intelligence. All the intelligence comes from its parent switch. It's one of the big things that we brought into UCS, right? It's why we don't view a chassis in our environment as a chassis. We view a chassis as a line card, okay? So that when we bring in a chassis, and it's one of the things that has been somewhat of a barrier for customers in their environment is to bring in chassis-based, because what happens? If I bring in a chassis, I got to put a management module in it, right? I got to bring networking modules into it. Before I've even put in any compute nodes into it, I've got to add all of these things and add the power. We make that FEX. We abstract that management. We abstract all of that intelligence and put it out into the network. When we started, there's a bunch of new technologies that we're bringing in. Ashley and I talked a little bit about what we wanted to talk about today. ACI, Application-Centric Network, is kind of the next buzzword. It's our SDN type strategy, right? Now where we take SDN, right, which SDN means something different to everybody, but it's basically centralized management is how most people define it. Or as I like to say, SDN still stands for still don't know, because a lot of people are still confused by what it is. But what we do is we take centralized management, okay, and we drive that down into the environment, and we provide profiles for the application, not just the compute. So we give each application a profile, so as that comes in and that traffic comes into the environment, we can do different things around it. So ACI is with our Nexus 9K. That's a big piece. That's a big driver for Cisco right now. Inter-cloud fabric. So we've been talking a lot today. A lot of our partners, I know Microsoft was up earlier talking about Azure, but when we start talking cloud, right, one of the things that we want to be able to do is these hybrid cloud environments is to move workloads in and out, right? If I have a workload up in the cloud, what if I want to bring it back in? What if I want to do my development up in one cloud or another, bring it back down, and actually put it in production in my environment? I can do some of those things with Inter-Cloud Fabric. Another big area around cloud that is a focus for us. So again, there's a lot of different things coming within data center. Here's our, I like to say this for me is my God Bless America slide. This is the products we cover, basically the Nexus 1000, the 2K, which is those FEX links that I talked about, the 5K, 6K, 7K, and now the 9K. So good news is we have a lot of different products within the data center. Sometimes the bad news is we have a lot of products in there. But the big thing is also unified compute. All of these run Nexus code, right? So it gives us some advantages from an integration standpoint. So we're going to be talking in the lower right-hand corner here today about unified compute. So what is unified compute? So again, I mentioned this. Really, there's a number of different things that we bring in. The biggest thing is simplified architecture, right? So now I don't have to bring up switches for fiber channel and network switches. I can integrate all of that together and bring it in as one, okay? Lower cost not only from the lower cost for CapEx, but also lower OpEx. Takes me a lot less to manage being able to do that. Fewer management touch points, right? Very simple. We've taken kind of the easy button approach, right? We can bring up a system, literally within a half hour out of the box. I can generally have a workload up and running. So again, I mentioned lower cost of total cost of ownership, both from a CapEx as well as an OpEx. I mentioned the unified management. We talk about SDN, right? SDN is what most people define it as is breaking out the control plane from the data plane. We've kind of been doing that for 5.5 years now, right? We broke out and we put we integrated UCS Manager in that environment, right? So I'm managing from one pane of glass, my compute, my virtualization, my network, both LAN as well as fiber channel, my storage in one thing, okay? Again, higher performance. When you integrate the way we do, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we're up to 100 world records. Okay, we can outperform. Again, I've never lost in 6 years of performance bake-off. Okay, it gives us the ability, since we're fully integrated, the ability to do and perform very, very quickly within the environment. And then finally, scale, right? We can scale this up very, very fast. Again, we can set up an easy design, being able to design this for the future, which we're doing. A lot of the customers that we did 6 years ago still have the same design within that. So, what is UCS? First thing, as I mentioned, it's unified management, right? We integrate management right in. You don't buy it, it's not a module. Okay, you don't have to license it. You don't have to buy additional capacity for management. It just comes inherent within the system. It is stateless. Okay, what does that mean? So stateless, we abstract the state of that server, right? And we do that with service profiles, right? So a stateless environment is just like your virtualized environment. A VM can run anywhere in your environment in any data center. Our service profiles or our state of those servers can be anywhere we want them to be. Okay, things like identity, things like UUIDs and MAC addresses and worldwide port names and node names, we abstract out and create identity with it, right? Because I can move it around just like I can in my VMware environment. If I pick it up and move it, I don't want to have to relicense because my UUID or my MAC address changed, okay? The second thing that we do when we create this stateless environment is we have to abstract all of what I call the behavioral type things, okay, the policies, right? So things like that you would normally do when you log in to configure a server, things like RAID. How do I want my RAID to be configured? Do I need, scrub policies? Do I need QoS on my NICs? Do I need certain types of network control policies? And I've got a couple of examples coming up of that. We've abstracted that. And then the last thing is connectivity. With our virtual interface card, right, we can support up to 256 virtual interfaces, whether those are HBAs or virtual NICs. We can configure those within the same environment. We can do a lot of the same things just like you can in your VMware environment. So once you create a VM, right, you can create a template, right? So that from here, once you create this template, you can very easily create additional profiles that are configured identical, okay? And so again, I can roll out service profiles, I can roll out servers very quickly. I can build a whole data center literally in minutes. So we can do that with templates. I can clone them just like I can your VMs today. Again, basically managing your hardware just like you're managing your virtualized environment today. You can see we've talked a little bit about extended memory. We had a big advantage with that when we first got into there. I think some of Intel's, like the Romley chipset where we added they added an additional rail of memory. We kind of lost some of that, but we're starting to bring that back in some of our E7 type processors. VNLink, right? VNLink, now I can actually give you visibility right up to the VNIC level, right? right up to the VM level and monitor that traffic. Because what's the problem today, right? If I am out on if I have a VM running, an application on a VM, and it's having problems, what happens? Network guy goes and connects to the downstream switch, right? They're going to monitor that. They can't tell you what VM that comes from, okay? I can't control that traffic from VM to VM traffic. I have no way to be able to do that. VNLink gives me that visibility where I can monitor as well as control right up to the VM level. FEXLink, I mentioned that before, right? We put a FEX, or essentially a Nexus 2K switch in the back of our chassis or connecting into our C-Series, our rack mounts, we'll talk about that, where I manage that not as a chassis isn't a chassis, it's a line card. A chassis, if you ever look at our, there is absolutely nothing to configure on a chassis. A chassis is, to us, is sheet metal and power, okay? Very much dramatically lowers the total cost of ownership because I don't have to put management modules in there. Lowers the ability to, for power draw, right? Because every time I add a module, right, I got to power that thing, right? So FEXLink is a big management tool that, again, manages a couple of different things. That connection isn't running spanning tree, so I don't have to worry about that. We are building it around FCOE, okay? So FCOE is basically where I'm going to be able to go in and configure both fiber channel and my network components and run it all on the same wire. So those are a lot of the different features within UCS. We'll cover some of these here, as we move forward. Here's our vision. It's stateless, right? Stateless chassis, stateless servers. We don't care where they reside, if they're in one data center or another, right? I'm managing it like my virtualized environment. If I need to make a workload and move it from one data center to another, I can certainly do that. Okay, I don't care where it's residing. In most cases, you don't care where your VMs are. Much simpler connectivity. It's usually a wire once and done. All of my connectivity into my fiber channel environment, every time you add a chassis, you're not going to have to go run around and connect all of your networking pieces in. Obviously, simplified management. It all comes with it. It's one place to go. I mentioned mobility of resources. If I need resources or additional resources for an application or for additional capacity, I can very easily move that anywhere within my environment. It changes how we do DR, right? I can pick up a service profile and move it from one data center to another and make it look just like it was operating in the initial data center. Gives me the ability to leverage my assets and my data centers. The active-active type data centers I see are much more prevalent now. So there's a lot of different things that we can do within the environment around that that gives you the ability. So what does this all look like? If you haven't seen it, the building blocks are up above. So the fabric interconnects is kind of at the heart of everything. The fabric interconnects do a number of things. Number one, it provides all my connectivity. It's going to do my connections northbound into my existing network, whether that be my LAN network or whether that is my fiber channel environment. I can connect into, we don't care what you connect into. It could be us or Brocade, could be us or any other switch, okay? So that's the first thing it does. It provides all the network connectivity. It also provides my network connectivity southbound into my chassis or my rack mounts. Okay, when we first got into this, we focused heavily on chassis. Okay, we no longer differentiate between a rack or a blade. Okay, we can connect them all in and do all the same features and functions, whether it's a rack or a blade, but it provides my connectivity southbound. Integrated into that is my UCS Manager. Okay, UCS Manager is built into the fabric interconnects. Okay, again, you don't license it. We've abstracted the management piece out of all of the chassis and put it into that environment. If you think about it, when you buy the quote-unquote system, you're really buying an access, your compute access, right? Those switches and below it really form your access layer of your compute environment. I can support today up to 160 servers under a pair of fabric interconnects. Okay, those fabric interconnects come in either 48 port or 96, and again, underneath it, I can support up to 160 servers, whether they are racks or blades. Now, we do see a lot of customers when we got into this, I see most of my customers, when they can, their preference is to go to a chassis-based environment, right? Because now I got shared resources, I got shared power, I got shared connectivity, I got a lot of advantages, I got shared cooling within a chassis. There are a lot of customers that are mixing and matching, right? We talked big time this morning about big data, right? Big data requires a lot of local storage, so big data type applications where I'll take a rack mount and load up a lot of local disks to it. Okay, the big data type applications, which are becoming very prevalent, may have racks in them rather than blades, so you can mix and match within that environment. A chassis a chassis has 8 slots in it, so a total of 8 servers per chassis. Although, if you really think about it, we really have a 160 slot chassis, right? Because if these are line cards, I can keep plugging them all in, right? And I can go up to 160 servers. Okay, so I always like to say I have, my chassis are between 8 and 160 ports. The chassis, the rear view of the chassis, now you got to remember what we're doing here, right? We're really bringing the network, and we're bringing the compute, and we're bringing the virtualization together, right? So I always like to say the rear view of the chassis is, if you're a network person, that's the front view, right? That's where you live, right? But the back view is really where the cables are. You'll see that in the back where the green and orange lines are. Those are what we call I/O modules. Those are nothing more than essentially a Nexus 2K or effects that we put into the back. Again, the front view, all of the cabling stays in the back. I'll show you some pictures of that, right? Makes for a very, very clean implementation, okay? And again, those could be racks or blades. So this is just another depiction, obviously, of a very large environment. Fabric interconnects at the top with UCS Manager integrated, connections northbound into my various fabrics, my network management portals. And then down below that, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen is what we would have our C-Series. Our C-Series are our rack mounts. Those can connect directly into the fabric interconnects, or if you need them to, they can connect in. I think in the illustration here, we have the Nexus 2Ks. Nexus 2K is a little bit cheaper port, so people will put that in and then connect those Nexus 2Ks into the fabric. I have customers that run this strictly with racks. I have some customers that run them strictly with blades, and I have a mix of everything in between. Okay, so we can do that either way. So again, this is obviously a very large environment. We would manage this as one logical entity. So everything gets managed from UCS. Okay. Just to kind of, when you bring up the system, the first thing that you do, here's these little connectors in the back. Those are our effects modules, or our what we call the I/O modules. You'll see the cables in there. We're driving in everything that we do in the data center, we're trying to drive power out, okay? Whether it's the efficiency on how we cool it by having it wide open and having all of the fans being able to mutually cool the chassis. In the connectors, so these connectors, these are the cables that connect up from the fabric interconnect and into any of our Nexus products are twin-X cables. First of all, they're very inexpensive, right? They come with the twin-X cable with the SFPs already attached. Okay, normally an SFP end is about, depending upon which one you want, can be up to $1,500, right? Times 2. That already comes bundled with it. Very low power draw, pulls 0.6 watts as opposed to, and again, depending upon the SFP, could be, up to 12 watts, depending upon which one it is. So again, you plug these things in, connect them all up. Again, this is what a chassis would look like. You'll see here that there's a couple of different versions. In this one, there's a 4-port. We also have an 8-port version. So in this case, I would have 80 gig of bandwidth coming out of my chassis. I also have an I/O module that I can get up to 160 gig of bandwidth coming out of the chassis. Although the vast majority, I have very few customers that do this. Most of my customers will do 40 gigs, so 2 per side. They are load balancing, load sharing, so it is an aggregate bandwidth within that environment. Here's what a large deployment would look like. Again, very clean. This is the back side, front side if you're a network person, that with all of the cables coming out. After you've got it racked and stacked, you go in and configure the service profiles. We have wizards that you can configure service profiles with. You can configure a service profile, very easily from scratch, in a minute or two. Once they're built, once you've created templates or choose to clone, you can create servers or service profiles as quickly as you need to. You can pre-configure chassis and racks. I have some customers, actually a lot of our partners will actually go in and configure a data center before the hardware has even come, right? So I can go ahead and create a service profile on servers that don't exist. As soon as they get plugged in, there's an auto discovery, it will automatically boot. Again, we're trying to do what you're doing today, just with a little bit better way to do it, okay? So when I look at the components, right, I mentioned here the fabric interconnects. I've got UCS Manager already integrated into it. That's who we talk to. It's where we do all the configuration. It in turn connects into those I/O modules that I talked to you about in the back of the chassis, or a Nexus 2K in the case of a C-series or a rack mount. Again, the chassis you can slide whatever blades in. I'll talk about what our options are around those. And then you can put whatever MES cards you want in the back. Most customers will put the Cisco VIC, which can support up to 256 virtual interfaces, but you can also do Emulex, QLogic, Intel, whatever you want. And again, it's managed as one entity. Again, this is kind of what the system looks like. It's a really nice GUI, very simple to learn. Again, configured it. Now, one of the things that we talk a lot about, you can see here, you got to remember, just like I mentioned, we're bringing the server folks, the LAN folks, the storage folks, and the VM folks together. So you'll see different tabs up there so that each piece and all of the various components of each can be configured from one location. The vast majority of these tabs, the LAN tab, SAN tab, VM tab, the admin tab, usually get configured one time. If we do it right, you shouldn't have to be making a whole lot of changes in there. You can set up role-based access control. So if you're, I have customers where, there's 20 people on the LAN or the network folks. There's, 10 guys on the storage. There's 15 guys on the server piece. I have some where it's all the same person, right? But you can break that all down with role-based access control if you want. Again, very granular, very easy to configure. We also have UCS Central. UCS Central does give you the ability to manage multiple domains. Okay, could be anywhere in the world, could be across the street, could be within the same data center. So a domain is a pair of fabric interconnects and the servers underneath it. You can kind of configure those anywhere. Again, you can create global profiles and global pools. As I've mentioned, we're really trying to manage and configure your servers just like you do your virtualized environment today. Okay? So service profile stateless. We abstract all of the state, the network, the fiber channel, the OS, all of those various components. So what do we do with a service profile? First thing we do is we configure it. And then what we do is we take that and apply it to a server, okay? And the server will take on all of the attributes that we've just configured. Now, I can take that and pick it up and move it. Now, why would I move it? Well, I have maintenance, right? Maybe the server failed. We're into our fourth generation of compute now, right? So if, when I start looking at lifecycle management, if 5 years ago I had installed a server and I want to take advantage of the new Intel processor speeds and memory speeds and additional memory capabilities, right? I can put a brand new server in and do my lifecycle management, take the service profile off and put it on the new stuff, and I'm already up and running. The other thing that I can do with this, and we were talking about this with the leveraging some of your assets, I can take that and I can clone that, or I can, from a template, create additional compute nodes. So that if I need at certain times of the year, right, additional capacity, banking, maybe I'm in a bank and I need additional capacity to put out my end of year tax statements, or healthcare, where maybe I need additional capacity when I'm doing my registration for my benefits, right? I can clone additional compute nodes, put it onto a node, and then take it off when I don't need it. So, things like, maybe I got test dev or, a lab environment, right, where I've got a service profile on. I can take that service profile off, put a production one on, run it into production, and then when I no longer need that capacity, take it back off. Really leveraging my assets. Kind of what this does, if I look at, and these are all of the different features that you would normally configure in a server, right? It's why it takes most of my customers, several days, if not weeks, depending upon the organization, to configure a server. I got to wait for all of these different things, different groups to be able to configure that. We take that, we abstract it all, essentially put it into a file, right, that I can move around and apply to any server. And once I've got that configured, that can reside anywhere, just like a VM can reside anywhere. And we put that out there. One of the things that has changed customers' lives, and I usually, my existing UCS customers will tell me, is that I somewhat undersold, was firmware management. Firmware management is extremely easy within this environment. I have multiple different ways to be able to manage firmware, okay? I can go in and I can actually go from the main GUI and pick and choose which servers that I want to configure or update the firmware on. Most customers will go in and create a policy within their templates to say, when you boot with 1.4 firmware, or whatever it is that is consistent with the OS that you're running. If you're running an ESX farm, right, whatever version of ESX you're running, you want a certain level of firmware to match capabilities. If in the future you want to update that, right, you move from ESX, 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 or whatever it is, instead of going to all of my servers to update firmware, I just go change it in the template. The template will update everybody, and they can they get their firmware updated from that. The example I like to give is I have a customer that used to take weeks to update all of their firmware across multiple data centers. Now they do that, I think, in the middle of the day for about 4 hours. So again, it's very unique. You can do it. You can manage it with your C-Series. You can manage it with your racks, again, however you want to. We have different bundles that you can do and download those off of Cisco.com. Now, on the other hand, I have a lot of customers say, well, I don't have problems with firmware management, right? I just don't do it. And so that's not an uncommon feedback. But again, this is usually the thing that my customers will say was worth the price of admission. Here's some of the connectivity that I talked about. You can scale up connectivity and bandwidth. I mentioned this before, right? So kind of coming out of there, I can manage, 20 gig or 2 connections all the way up to 8 connections for 160 gig. Again, most of my customers are doing the 2-link version. I can connect this up to, again, we don't care what you connect northbound. I don't care if it's Cisco or Brocade. I don't care if it's, whoever. Northbound into your LAN, you could have separate connections. We can also directly attach storage. So if you want to directly attach it, whether that's fiber channel, whether it's FCOE, iSCSI, whatever that is, you can directly attach it. We can do full zoning on this. Now, most of my customers, what I will tell you is that if you've already got a SAN switch, you want to continue to do your zoning and all of that on the SAN switch. Where this comes in really handy is in colos, right, or small remote locations. I don't want to have to put a fiber channel switch out for, 2 or 3 ports, right, to attach an array. I just want to connect it in. I can do all my zoning right there on the fabric interconnects. Again, another way to save money. So the latest servers, I'm going to keep going here. We follow Intel's TikTok strategy. I know Intel's got a booth here, so I'm not going to go into a lot of the details on the Haswell chipsets or whatever, but we follow right along with them. Okay, when they come out with a new processor, we come out with a new blade, right? So we are now rolling out our M4 modules. The M4 doesn't mean anything other than it's our 4th iteration since Intel has done their TikTok, or the TOC, right, within their environment. On the blades, the most prevalent server that we sell is the B200M4. Okay, I can get 768 gig of memory on it. It's the latest Intel processor. I can put 2 hard drives in it. I've got a couple SDs. I got a couple of USB ports on there if I need to, and I've got 2 slots for MES cards. Okay, so for network cards. For every blade, okay, the B's are, you know, down below, B for blade, and I always like to say B for blade and C for not blade, or in other words, our rack mounts. We have an equivalent, right? So the equivalent of a B200 or a blade would be our C240 or our C220 M4. Same processor, same amount of memory, but just in a rack mount, okay? Those racks can act as a standalone server, so do just like you're doing today, right? Manage it independently, put an IP address on there, or you can integrate those into a pair of fabric interconnects, whatever meets your need. On the high end, right, we have a couple of options. So the second digit, when you look at our numbering, so there's the B200 is the 2-proc system, the B4, in this case the B420M4, 4-proc system, again, so if you need additional compute capacity. We also have up on the E7 processors, okay, we have the ability to scale up on the B260M4 as well as the B460. This is the E7 processor. We can get up to 6 terabytes of memory on those things, okay, on a 4-proc system. So we can scale those pretty good, both in a rack configuration as well as a blade, okay. Again, this is just the example of the B200. I think I hit everything here. It's the E5 V3 processors, running at 2133. If you have any questions on the processors and what they do, Intel's here. Probably will do a better job of explaining what came in that, but understand that that's what we're supporting. Just another way to look at it. So you can see here, we just released the Grantley. They just released the Grantley piece. And then you can see up above the top 2 rows are the E7 processors. Excuse me. On the racks, again, it's pretty equivalent, right? We follow right along with that, whether it's a rack or a blade. And again, I have customers that run both. Couple of new ones we just announced, right? So a high-density storage server. Again, I can get 64 bay drives. Again, you know, you have big unstructured data environments like we were talking about earlier this morning. This could be a fit, a lot of local storage. This is one of the new things that we announced, okay? So we had a lot of our smaller customers as well as some of our larger customers that had lots of remote sites, right? A remote site, maybe, you know, it's a regional site or a large remote location where maybe you need, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blades or 6 servers at a remote location. The feedback we got was, you know what, we love UCS. I love to be able to configure servers very quickly. I love to be able to have consistency across my configurations. But I'm out in West Overshoe nowhere, you know, with 5 servers. Really, you're going to make me buy a 48-port switch, right, to get UCS Manager. What we did was we came out with UCS Mini, okay? So UCS Mini, or Mini UCS, has been out now for a couple of months. We did 2 things. We took the functionality of that fabric interconnect and put it into the back of those I/O module slots. So UCS Manager now rides in the chassis. And we made it a 4-port, actually a 5-port switch. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. The other thing that we did is give you the ability to run 110-volt power, okay? So, right, because a lot of times if I'm on a remote site, I don't have 220, right? Understand, right, if you're running 110, you're not going to be able to load up 8 servers with, you know, 768 gig of memory, but it does give you the ability for small locations to be able to use 110 option. What we did was we combined that I/O module, that little FEX that sits in the back of the chassis, with the fabric interconnect. You know, we put a management port and a console port just like on a big switch, USB port, and then we have 4 ports of UP, right? In other words, unified ports. They can be whatever you want them to be, just like you can on the 48 port or the 96 port, right? I need it to direct attach storage, whether that's fiber channel or iSCSI, I can do that. If I need to connect additional rack mounts, I can do that. I'll show you this in the next illustration. I can connect up into existing fiber channel switches or LAN switches. Basically, I have 4 ports to do whatever I want. The other thing that we added was a 40-port switch. Now, this isn't enabled yet. It came with it. You will see across the Nexus product line, I don't care whether it's UCS, all of our product switches, our new 5600s, the 9300s are coming inherent with 40 gig. Okay, 40 gig is becoming very prevalent across the board, and we're integrating it in. Now, I have a lot of customers that say 40 gig, really? I'm not even using the 10 gig that you sold me last year. 40 gig, if you look at the price point of 40 gig, it's in some cases it's less than 10% delta between a 10 gig. And I can run 4 10 ports on it. So I can break this port out into 4 10 gig ports if I need to. Okay, it's a nice way to be able to scale that out. What that looks like then from a configuration is on the left side, right? I can take an existing chassis, put that UCS Mini blade in the back, right? Connect northbound into my network. I can put 8 servers into the chassis, and then I can also connect up some rack mounts if I want to. Okay. In future releases, we're going to give you the ability to add a standard chassis with a standard I/O module in the back. Okay. So again, this is customers that, even my lower end customer, when I say lower end, but customers with less than 8 servers, this is a nice entry point. Okay, so we're starting to see a lot of traction within that. Last couple of slides here, because I see we're running out of time. Again, a word from our sponsor. Again, we're growing very, very quickly. UCS, if you look at how our growth rates, right, it's a down market. I think we are one of the very few server manufacturers that are continuing to grow. We're up over $3 billion a year run rate. We are number 1 from a blade standpoint in less than 5 years. We're very, very proud of that. It's a product that, again, I've been with Cisco for 16 years. It's a product that I am incredibly proud of. It's a great product. You'll see here a couple of different things. Again, we have over 36,000 customers. We have a huge UCS user group base. Again, we're doing a lot of the, our biggest challenge with our user groups is that they've gotten so big that we can't house them anywhere, right? Which is, I guess, a good problem to have. Again, number 1 in market share. The big thing, I mentioned this before, that didn't come out real well on the slide. We're up to 100 world records. Okay, you can see some of the examples of the world records, whether they're CPU, cloud. In 5 years, I've never lost a bake-off on performance. Okay, we're very, very proud of that, and that's really how we integrate into the environment. Couple of things. So we've got a huge ecosystem partnership. We have, for the most part, played Switzerland when it comes to the hypervisors as well as storage. Couple things, right? Obviously, VMware is a 10,000-pound gorilla. We do a lot of stuff with Microsoft, right? Microsoft and us. I notice Microsoft is presenting here. Us and Microsoft in the UC environment, we battle it out. In the data center, we are best friends. Okay, all the things that I can do within VMware, from a virtualization standpoint, I can do within I can give visibility all the way up in a hypervisor into a Hyper-V environment. So virtualization, storage. Once again, we have pre-canned CVDs and pre-canned solutions that we can roll out. IBM and us, we've had this kind of uncertain relationship. We announced today what we call a Versa Stack, which is our compute, our network, VMware, and then it also has VMware storage, IBM storage in it. Okay, so solutions around you know, helping you, whether, again, you are a EMC or a NetApp or an IBM storage shop, to be able to very easily integrate this into your existing environment. So again, you know, this is just kind of the last slide here, and we'll, you know, give us some time back here. You know, it's an integrated design, as I mentioned. We're taking the network, we're integrating it in with the compute side of it. Service profiles really changes, you know, kind of the whole realm of what we can do and how we design networks. Again, integrated management with UCS Manager and or UCS Central if you have multiple domains. Again, unified fabric, being able to take fiber channel, network, iSCSI, we don't care. We don't differentiate whatever and integrate them in. Again, form factor independence. We don't care. You want to do racks or blades. You know, sometimes whether you are a rack or a blade, you know, sometimes we're up on layers 8 and 9 of the OSI model, religious and political. We don't care, you know, whichever way you want to go. With that, I am 1 minute over. I apologize. We are here. I'm going to have to head out not too long, but you know, Ashley's going to be here. If you ever want follow-up, if you ever, you know, want us to come in and talk about all of our data center solutions, you know, this is UCS is just kind of one small part of our overall, whether it's ACI or our Nexus, we're more than happy to do that. So thank you very much for the time. If you have any questions, like I said, let us know. We'll be in the booth next door. Cool. Thanks.